Ibn Kathir, may Allah have mercy on him, related a remarkable story in his commentary on this verse. And he said its chain of narration is sound, going all the way back to Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. Aisha said that a woman came from Dumar al-Jandal seeking the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. But she reached Medina only a few days after he had passed away. When she arrived and learned that he had died, she was overcome with grief, and she wept bitterly. She wept, and she told Aisha her whole story. A story you'll find recorded in the commentary of Ibn Kathir. In essence, the woman said this: she had lost her husband. He had gone away from her, and she loved him deeply, so losing him was unbearable. She went to an old woman and said, "I've lost my husband. I want you to help me find a way to bring him back." The old woman said, "I'll show you something to do, but you must not disobey me in it. And if you do it, I promise you, your husband will return." And because she loved him so much, she said, "I won't disobey you." So the old woman set a time with her, and she brought 2 black dogs. The woman rode one, the old woman rode the other, and in a matter of moments, they were in Babylon. They had been in Dumar al-Jandal, and in moments, there they were, in Babylon. And there she saw 2 men, hanging by their feet. They asked, "What have you come for?" "We've come to learn magic." They said, "We are only a trial, so do not fall into disbelief." Again they warned her, "We are nothing but a test. Do not disbelieve." She said, "I want to learn magic." So one of them said, "Go to that oven over there and urinate into it." He pointed out a specific oven and told her to urinate in it. She went to the oven, but she shuddered, and she came back to them. They asked her, "Did you urinate in it?" She said, "Yes." They asked, "What you see?" She said, "I saw nothing." They said, "You're lying. You didn't do it. Go back to your homeland and do not disbelieve." She said, "I want to learn magic." They said, "Go to that oven and urinate in it." So she went again, and again she shuddered, and she came back. She said, "I did it." They asked, "What did you see?" She said, "Nothing." They said, "You're lying. Go back to your homeland and do not disbelieve. Go back home. Do not disbelieve." She said, "I want to learn magic." All of this because she wanted her husband. Her overwhelming love for him had blinded her and driven her to keep searching for any way to get him back. "Do not disbelieve," they kept telling her. She said, "I want to learn magic." They said, "Go and urinate in the oven." So she went to the oven, and this time she did it. And the moment she did, she felt something leave her. A horseman who rose up into the air and flew off into the sky as she watched him go. She came back to them and said, "I did it." They asked, "What did you see?" She said, "I saw a horseman mounted on a horse or something like that come out of me and fly off into the sky." They said, "Yes, that was your faith. It has just left you. That was your faith leaving you." A magician cannot become a magician except through disbelief. That's why they kept saying, "Go back to your land, do not disbelieve. We are only a trial, do not disbelieve." She turned to the old woman with her and said, "But nothing has happened to me." So the old woman said, "Take this wheat, throw it." She threw it. She said, "Tell it, sprout." And it sprouted. She said, "Tell it, grow." And it grew tall. She said, "Tell it, dry up." And it dried. She said, "Tell it, be ground." And it was ground into flour. She said, "Tell it, bake." And it became bread. She realized she could command, and whatever she ordered would happen right there in front of her. And in that moment, she was struck with deep anguish. She grieved bitterly over what she had become, that she had sunk to this point. So she came to Medina, searching for the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, wanting to lay her situation before him, to bring her case to him. But she found that he had already died, and she broke down weeping. She wanted a way out. Her faith was gone. It had left her, and now she was in this state. She was trapped in the agony of having her faith torn away, and all she wanted was her faith back. So she began going to the companions, asking for a ruling. But every time she asked one of them, he sent her to another, and he sent her to another. They kept passing her case along, each one referring her to the next. Ibn Abbas, or someone there with him, said, "If you still had 2 living parents, I would give you a ruling," as if he wanted to guide her through honoring one's parents. Subhanallah. Because honoring your parents is one of the great blessed acts of worship that can set a person's whole life right when he devotes himself to it and draws near to Allah the Most High. He said, "If you had 2 living parents, I would issue you a ruling." Hisham, one of the narrators of this report, said, "Had she come in our own time, she'd have found no shortage of fools ready to issue her a ruling." Meaning, today, rulings come fast and loose. People rush to give them. But the companions, they kept passing her case along, each one sending her to the next. So this is one of the stories Ibn Kathir, may Allah have mercy on him, recorded. And he said its chain is sound all the way to Aisha. Now, once, I was in a gathering with some people from an African country, and I taught them the book, The 3 Fundamental Principles, by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, may Allah have mercy on him. And by the grace of Allah the Most High, they grasped Tawheed, and they grasped sound creed. And in the course of that, I began warning them about magicians, what they do, and so on. Then one of those present said, "Let me tell you something that happened to me." He was one of the very students studying the book with me. "This happened to me." He said, "I'm not telling you something I merely heard about. This happened to me, personally. And that's why you can now narrate this story straight from me, from the very person it happened to." He said, "I had a neighbor I knew well. He hadn't inherited any wealth from a relative. He was no merchant. He had no trade, no profession, nothing. And yet, he always had money. Always. Sometimes I'd be in need, so I'd go to him, and he'd give me some. One day I came to him and said, 'You're my neighbor. You know my situation, my hardship, my poverty, how much I'm struggling. And I always see money sitting there, under your pillow. So, as one neighbor to another, show me how to become like you. Show me how to be like you.' He said, 'I'm willing to show you how to become like me, but I have one condition. Whatever I ask of you, whatever it is, you do it. No hesitation.'" Remember the old woman with the woman from Damat al-Jandal? What did she say? "Do not disobey me. I'll ask something of you, and you must be ready." And the woman said, "I'm ready." So here too, the neighbor said, "Whatever I ask, are you ready?" And he said, "I'm ready." He said, "At that time, I was the one desperate for money, just as she was desperate for her husband. It's usually worldly craving that drives a person. So here I was, craving wealth, seeing all that money with my neighbor." So he said, "I won't disobey you." He said, "So my neighbor told me, go at a certain time, right as the sun is setting. And when does the sun set? Between the 2 horns of Satan. Go down to the sea, to the shore, while the disk of the sun is sinking. And as it nears the horizon, call out with this name." He told me the name his neighbor had taught him. I've forgotten it, and praise be to Allah that I have. He said, "Call out with this name. As the sun is about to set, stand facing the sea, with the sun in front of you, and call out this name. Shout it loudly. Call on him with this name. When you've called him aloud several times, you'll see the sea split open, and a creature will come out, cutting through the water. Its form is horrifying, terrifying, but don't be afraid. It will call you by your name, and it will make some demands of you. Whatever it asks, just say yes, at your service." He said, "So I went down to the shore at sunset, and as the sun was about to set, I started calling out, calling with that name. I called several times, out loud, and sure enough, the sea split open. I saw a beast emerging, covered in hair, right in the middle of the water, coming closer and closer to me. It said, "You, so-and-so?" I said, "Yes." It said, "I have some demands for you." I said, "At your service?" And by Allah's mercy to me, the very first thing it demanded was about something I had loved my whole life, something I would never bargain over. By Allah's mercy to me, the first thing it demanded touched on something I was raised on, something I would never even think of compromising. It said, "You, so-and-so?" I said, "Yes." It said, "Stop praying." I said, "Man, the prayer? I will never give up my prayer." Those were his exact words. "I'm not giving up the prayer." He said, and the moment I said those words, it let out a scream, turned its back on me, and was gone. It vanished. It vanished. And this is part of Allah's mercy, the mighty and majestic, toward the one who prays, the person who clings to his prayer and refuses to bargain it away. It is a mercy from Allah, the Most High. He said, "So after a while, I walked away. I cut ties with my neighbor. I knew now that this was a path of pure darkness. Then, one day, I passed by him. He saw me, called me over, and unleashed the foulest, most obscene insults at me. He said, 'What did you do to it?' Because the devils had come to him and turned on him, demanding, 'How could you send us someone who won't obey? How could you send us someone who won't comply?' He said, and so Allah the Most High had mercy on me." So here is the point. A magician does not arrive at magic except through stages. And he does not become a magician except by disbelieving in Allah the Most High. Once you understand this truth, and you understand the meaning of the words of Allah the Most High, and the magician will not succeed wherever he is, then this, my brothers, by Allah, this alone is enough to cut off every tie with any magician whatsoever, no matter who he is. Never reach out to a magician, whatever the matter, whatever the situation, even if you're going to him to have a spell undone, because the general meaning of the words of Allah the Most High and the magician will not succeed wherever he is points to exactly this.